Just like last year, I wanted to show what my Halloween costume looked like. This year, I was trying to go as Poison minus the pink hair. While I wouldn't be opposed to dyeing my hair pink, that's gonna be a little difficult to explain at work. But one thing I will say, if you ever want to do a Poison cosplay, is it's definitely a summer costume because let me just say, a midriff and a mixture of the Daisy Dukes. Well, it gets a little cold during this time of year. So in general, I would say this month was about 50-50. There was some good stuff, there was some really bad stuff. But all in all, I'd say it was kind of at an equilibrium. I'll start with the bad stuff first because I like to end things on a better note. So, one of the biggest bummers I had was I had a blood test this month. Basically, with my rising T levels from the last one, we wanted to see if this old regiment I was on before would actually fix the problem. It did not. In fact, this is the first time since December of 2020 that my T levels have been higher than my E levels. That was very disturbing news to me, to say the least. I figure we'll try another blood test just to make sure that there wasn't some sort of fluke in the computer, and if the levels really are that high, then we're gonna have to go for another test. One I never really thought of before, so the doctor was saying this test would show what part of the body this excess of T is coming from. And it's been a while since I've been through biology, but what other area in my body would be producing T other than the very thing I want to remove? There were also a few other bummers this month, but that's really the biggest one that I want to talk about. So, on to the good aspects. The first was after going to my sister's wedding. It was about a week later that I received a card from my aunt. She gave me money to help buy a new wardrobe. I practically cried when I first saw that card because I'm just like, this is awesome. Because this is one of those things I've realized is I get the idea that everything is going up, but women's fashion is just such a ripoff. I mean, the idea of a midriff, it's like half a shirt, and that's like $10? Seriously? But then again, I'm very spoiled by going to thrift stores where I could pick up this midriff for, say, $2 or $3. However, the real difficulty there is finding something without the pit stains. And that was kind of my theory as well, is imagine how far this money would go if I went to thrift stores. But seeing how hard it is to find things in my size, I figured if I went to a big box store, it'd be a little better. Well, I do know that height was always a problem, and on top of that, I've got arms like an orangutan. It's good if I want to reach something, but it's just impossible for me to buy long sleeve shirts. So that was one strike against me. But the other one is just the sizes don't make any sense. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. You could be like a size 0 in one manufacturer, and it's about the same as the size 9 by another. Where's the consistency? Thank goodness for changing rooms. I don't know how anybody can buy clothes online. Probably one of the most interesting things I found was graphic tees. Now, as you know from my various videos, I wear a lot of graphic t-shirts, but they were mostly male, or at least they were coded as such. However, these ones were specifically women's. And probably one of the things that just kind of blew my mind was, so as I mentioned, I'm a bit of a classic car nut. And one of the graphic tees I got had a 1964 Corvette on it. It was just fantastic. I kind of think back to, there was this one Fairly Odd Parents episode, if anybody remembers that show. I'm a little bit on the older end, so sometimes I just have references people don't get. But anyway, the gist of the show is that Timmy, the main character, has fairies that can grant him a bunch of wishes, and a bunch of shenanigans ensue. Well, there was a bit of a prank going on when Timmy basically wished that he wanted to be a girl. And the whole episode was him just trying to figure out how to navigate this new identity. And in a ways, I relate to that, because every so often he kind of stopped and went, I'm a girl now. Can I like this? And that's very much how I felt when I saw that graphic tee with the classic car. It seems like that's such a masculine thing. I've just proven it can also be feminine too. Which I guess kind of goes into a bit of a debate I brought up in another video, is what is a woman? There's just a lot of different traits. Everybody has different standards and whatnot, and, well, maybe it's my experience, maybe this is the experience of other trans people. I would imagine it's probably the experience of genderqueer people, but you almost have to create your own standard, because there isn't really one to begin with, which is kind of nice, but also a little intimidating, because now you have to pave a new path that didn't exist. One of the other big things, and this is going back to the fashion discussion, I managed to wear a skirt in public for the very first time, and that this is a very big deal for me. I would wager there's probably some other trans women that feel very, empowered, very, shall we say, protected by wearing a skirt. For me, I feel very vulnerable. I guess I just keep flashing back to that famous Marilyn Monroe scene where she walks over this sewer grate or whatever, and the various air is just pushing everything up, and, well, since I haven't had bottom surgery, that's not something I want to show people. But this time, it went pretty well. In fact, I was able to bring that confidence back out again, as I went to a Halloween party with a few good friends, and I dressed up as Cheryl, what I did for last year's video. And yeah, I wore a skirt again. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. But I will admit, you really have to figure out how to position your legs when you're wearing a skirt. One of the typical things people joke about is the idea of man-spreading, where the legs are just wide open. Now, doing that in a skirt, as a woman, that could be seen as an invite for some not safe for work acts. So you have to figure out how to do the opposite. Instead of man-spreading, you have to, really close your legs to kind of censor that particular point. This is really hard to talk about, and trying to keep it also for a more general audience at the same time. There were a few other little interesting things that happened this month as well. So, I try to keep my mother in the know when it comes to, what's happening. I basically kind of told her that I plan to undergo bottom surgery. And I think now it's really starting to sink in that I'm serious about this. This isn't some sort of phase. I really want to be a woman. And so now she's getting a little nervous. She started doing a little research into this, trying to figure out what kind of preparations I needed to make. And one of the more interesting ones is that there was some rumors that a distant relative on her side of the family was also trans femme and also had undergone the surgery. She needed to do some more research to see if this was actually true and get the name of who this person was. Well, the research paid off, and I had a very good conversation with my relative about this. I was able to pick up a few new things I never really thought about before. Most of which I'll just kind of omit for the sake of trying to keep a PG rating at the very least. But even more interesting than that is It was after having the usual Sunday brunch. It was just me and her. We were talking, and she started going over, like, the do's and don'ts about what you have to do to be a woman. It was one of those things that took me very much by surprise, because, well, when I first told her about this, she thought I was pulling a really sick joke on her. And now she's to the point where she knows I'm serious. She wants to make sure I'm doing everything right. And I very much appreciate that. Although, the way she led up to that conversation was she wanted more information about bottom surgery, and ugh, I can't imagine too many people are comfortable about talking to their own mother about downstairs. But I was able to just kind of do one of those and then tell her everything that needed to be told. I think those are the major events of this month. So, as I mentioned in my 3-year special, there was one other thing I wanted to do there that I couldn't for the sake of time, so I'm going to do it here. So when it comes to trans role models, my favorite, for now, will still remain Christine Jorgensen. I find her very relatable in a lot of aspects, and one of the biggest things is she's not afraid to admit that she's not perfect. She's made mistakes, bad decisions, various other things. She is a human, not a god like other trans icons that I've heard of. So, I figured this would be a bit of a fun thing. In the late 50s, she had an interview that was later put onto vinyl. I figured just for fun, I would go on that same interview, with Mr. R. Russell being the mediator. I'm obviously going to edit this down a fair bit because the whole interview lasted about an hour. And on top of that, there was a lot of questions that Mr. Russell asked that don't really pertain to me. I didn't go to Denmark for surgery. I haven't had surgery yet. I didn't become a famous nightclub actor or even a celebrity. More so than just the idea of being trans. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, if you're curious about the whole interview, I'll leave it down in the description.
Are you a woman?
Well, that's a pretty difficult question to answer these days. It all depends on how you define what a woman is. If you define being a woman as being more feminine than masculine, then, well, I would like to consider myself a woman. If you want to go biologically, once again, it's about 50-50. There's different aspects of what a woman would be in different cultures. And it's hard to say if I would fit that mold or not. But for my personal definition, I'd say yes, I am a woman. Mostly.
If you should see a girl, an exceedingly curvaceous, beautiful, seductively appearing woman, say of the Marilyn Monroe variety, do you ever wish that you could go back and be a man?
Not really. When I was a man, I never really went on dates. The idea of romance or even sexual attraction was just not a thing. I very much found the entire thing to be not only disgusting, a waste of time, but also a waste of money. Being a woman, though, it just kind of opens up a whole new world. They say in order to love somebody else, you must first love yourself. And now that I do, I feel like I have a capacity for love. In fact, I kind of want to get into that now. And that was something I never really had when I was a man.
When you go into a women's restroom, do women feel that there is a man among them, or how do they feel about your presence?
It's honestly a pretty good question. It's not like I'm going to every other woman in the restroom and saying, hey, do I look like I'm a fellow club member? And for the most part, I just do my business, wash my hands, go about my day, much like any other woman would. Although I do hear that it's a more typical feminine thing to go to the bathroom in groups. So maybe the idea of me going in individually is something that could be a little bit of a set off, but other than that, nothing.
Have you had plastic surgery of any kind?
No, at least not yet anyway. I mean, I kind of wish I was a little more fuller, which I guess it really depends on how far the hormones go if I want to try to get a little bigger in that aspect. Some people might talk about facial feminization surgery, but I don't know. I think I look pretty good already. Maybe if there was something to round out my hips a little bit, perhaps that could be something, but no. I have not undergone any plastic surgery.
How do you feel in women's clothes?
That's a pretty good question. It's not really something I've put a lot of thought into, but I guess really the best way to describe it is when I was wearing guy clothes, it felt more like I was wearing a uniform. There was nothing really special about it. I kind of figured I looked okay. The only times I ever felt like I looked fantastic was when I would be wearing a full suit for band concerts or what have you. But wearing women's clothes, honestly, it just makes me feel more feminine. Men's clothes aren't really designed to show off the curvaceous nature of a typical woman, and, well, women's clothes do. They're sewed very differently. I will admit, there is kind of a level of excitement whenever I wear, like, a really nice dress or something. It was almost like that same excitement I had when, well, I was wearing a suit. I knew I looked nice, and I felt really nice.
Has the public, when I say the public, have individuals from the public been unkind to you? Have they thrown snide and nasty remarks, perhaps not directly to you, but within earshot, shouted things from the crowd that have been upsetting or depressing?
Well, it's kind of everywhere. If you're on the internet, you're going to run into a whole bunch of people that think that I'm upsetting the balance of nature, but you're also going to run into a lot of people that believe that I'm doing the right thing. However, it's just hard to kind of tune out all of it, especially when some of it is more direct. 2 years ago, my account got taken over by trolls that tried my best to just torment me because, well, I'm a woman and they just see me as a man that needs therapy. Which, I mean, I do see a therapist anyway, but not because of that. Honestly, I'm quite at peace being a woman. Something that a lot of these people throwing these remarks can't really seem to understand. But yes, I've definitely had some unkind responses, and sometimes it's gotten me a little depressed. But mostly because I'm the kind of person that fights back. I want to win, and I'm depressed because you just can't win with these people. They won't listen to logic of anyways. They just know they are right, and there's nothing you can do about it.
How tall are you?
I'm about 5'10" last I measured. It's kind of interesting. I remember for a while I would tell everybody I was 5'12", kind of joking, saying that I'm 6 feet tall, which I don't know if that's just something I told people or if I was actually that tall. I have heard that people can shrink being on hormones for a while, but 2 inches is a bit dramatic, I would say. But at the same time, I guess I'm just slightly above average rather than really above average.
And what is your weight?
Oh, you naughty boy. Don't you know it is kind of rude to ask a woman her weight or her age? Or probably one of the worst ones is she pregnant without actually being pregnant? This is actually something interesting. So, after starting hormones, I actually lost 20 pounds. I used to weigh about 177 and now I weigh 157. It was a bit of a shocker when I saw that. However, when it comes to most body mass indexes, apparently I'm about 20 pounds overweight, and, well, that just seems a little ridiculous. Especially the hormones raising my metabolism. I am just very hungry most of the time, and there's no way I'm going to lose another 20 pounds. I don't think that's healthy.
Now, many people think what you did was a marvelous scientific thing, an inspirational thing. Many think it was disgusting, sickening, done for a cheap expose in the same sense that many sexual perverts are exhibitionists. What do you think of that? What's your reaction to this?
Well, I know it's a bit of a cliche, something that was very much said a ton in the 2010s, but haters gonna hate. And, well, what I mean when I say that is more the idea that there are just some people that you can't change their minds on. The people that think that I'm in the wrong are gonna believe that unless, I don't know, maybe they themselves have some sort of trans awakening, but I get the feeling that a lot of bad stuff would happen before they would ever come to accept that. But as for the people that think I'm doing something good or kind of a scientific breakthrough, not sure if there's really much of a breakthrough at this point anyway. I mean, people have been transitioning for quite a long time at this point. It's just kind of hard to get the exact dates because there's people that don't want to write this in the history books. And even then, if they do, it's probably something that's going to be really skewed. So it's kind of hard to say how much is factual. But all the same, it does feel a bit like a scientific marvel to me, anyway. In the idea that, well, I'm finally resolving a dream that I just did not think was possible. Now that I have it, like, there's no way I'm ever going back. I just feel fantastic as a woman.
How long did you contemplate this problem to summon the courage, and that's what most people consider it, courage, to go through with it? I can imagine there were many chances to turn back, many times when you were somewhat doubtful. Shall I or shall I not? The trip over there entailed some time, and the waiting and the medical preparation for the transformation. Did you ever think about it up until you got to the point of no return, as it were?
I will admit, there are a few times I had doubts, and yeah, there was definitely plenty of times I could turn back. In fact, that was the thing about HRT in the first place, is the doctor said that if you realize that this isn't right for you, that it doesn't make you feel good, then you can just stop. And that'd be it. You can go on living the life that you had before. But as I got further and further along, I realized that my life has just become so much better since doing this in the first place. I know it's always been a cliche among the trans community to say, I wish I could have done this sooner, but who knew that this much happiness would come about from, well, I know it's a complicated process, but it feels so simple in the end. It just felt like the choice between choosing to be just okay with living, like if I was struck by a bus, I wouldn't consider it much of a tragedy, or the choice of actually wanting to live. I love being alive as a woman. There's so many subtle things that just make me happy. Like, just looking in the mirror these days, that's enough to just put a smile on my face. I have a face I like. I have a body that I feel very comfortable in. Well, minus one rather big aspect, but I've already mentioned that part enough. But in general, I just feel wonderful. And while there were definitely chances to turn back, I don't want to.
Have you had any sincere entreaties for a romantic interlude?
Now, that's a bit of a fancy way of saying, are you romantically involved with anybody? And the answer would be no. It's something I would like to do. I would like to have a girlfriend. I would like to go on a date. But such a thing is just very difficult in this post-COVID world. People are afraid to go outside. People realize that they can live their lives without ever leaving the home. And on top of that, it's just difficult to approach anyone. What am I supposed to do? Go to a grocery store and be like, hey, you have a very beautiful face. Depending on the person, they might slap me across the face and call the cops for sexual harassment. And then people talk about dating sites, but that's something you have to pay for, and maybe it's just something that comes with the idea of dating in the first place, but it seems like you could get stuck with some serious nut jobs, and I kind of fear for my safety sometimes in the idea of going online for somebody. It'd be nice if I could get like a fairy tale ending, you know, I'll just kind of let down my magic hair and all of a sudden Princess Charming will come to my rescue and we can live happily ever after. But in the immortal words of Morgan Freeman, this is no fairy tale world. And yes, that is an awful Morgan Freeman impression.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Well, I'm the youngest of four. I got two older brothers and an older sister. Two of them have not only gotten married, but have also had children.
Now let's think ahead to the years when they will be probably 17. And how will you feel and what will you say if they should come to you and say, oh, we heard that you were once a man?
Well, this has something that's already come up, actually. My nephew is about 9, I believe, and shortly after transitioning, I talked to his mother about this. I wanted to know how to approach this subject because I'm not really sure if he really knows enough about gender to be able to comprehend such a thing. And on top of that, I have a subtle fear that if he turned out to be transgender later, that I would be the one to blame for potentially corrupting him. But my sister said she would take care of it, and, well, I'm not sure if she really has, as he kind of refers to me as Sir He sometimes. All in good time, I guess. I just hope he doesn't have to be 17 before he can realize who I am. I spent a long time hiding this, and dang it, I just want to be myself. As for my older brother, well, my niece is about 5 months old at this point, so it's gonna be a while before she's gonna get told. But at the same time, I think it's gonna be a lot easier for her because my older brother is a fair bit more accepting about this. When I told him I was trans, he wanted to know a few things. He wanted to ask me questions, get to know what's going on. And he even offered me a little bit of advice. He said I should get out of where I am because it's not safe. Which, while I appreciate that sentiment, I think he's nuts. I feel perfectly safe here. And, yeah. That is the end of the interview. Like I said, there was a lot more questions that I cut out, but these were the ones that I felt made the most sense for me to answer. Because there were other questions about, like, hormones, and other questions that I could answer, but I've already answered several times throughout these update videos that I didn't want to repeat it all. So, until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.